And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 28th day of July 2022. And it's a beautiful day out here in Brisbane, 12 degrees and sunny. So it is looking very, very good out the window as we see out there today. Hey, what we have for you today is the latest news update, and then we have our daily India report. Well, right now, looking at our inflation, so let's begin with that news first up. Let's see where we are in the percentage wise and the points wise.
1 and 5 15, all 6 are 66.
When people's fortunes are down,
4 and 9 49, all the 4s 44.
business at this bingo hall goes up.
People are just sort of trying their luck and seeing what they can do to get themselves ahead.
The soaring cost of living means people here are struggling to make ends meet.
Well, it's meat. The meat is very expensive, you know.
We've had to cut back on our food. We're feeding a family of 6. I'm living with my parents, so I don't even think I'll ever be able to get into my own home.
Consumer prices rose less than forecast, but are still up 1.8% in the quarter, taking annual inflation to 6.1%, the highest in 21 years since the GST was introduced. In just the last 3 months, the cost of building new homes went up by 5.6%. Fuel was 4.2% higher, despite the government's petrol excise cut still in place. And eating is getting much more expensive. Vegetables, fruit and meat are all costing a lot more at the checkout.
Inflation is high and rising. It will get tougher before it starts to ease.
We're still seeing quite a lot of these global supply chain pressures. Food inflation is very strong, especially in the fresh food area because of the flooding in Queensland and northern New South Wales.
Annual core inflation, which strips out one-off price rises, is 4.9%, well above the Reserve Bank's 2 to 3% target range, and galloping along at twice the rate of wage growth. Consumer prices are skyrocketing around the world, prompting the International Monetary Fund to downgrade its global economic growth forecast around 0.5% to 3.2%, while issuing a grim warning of uncertain times ahead as central banks react to inflation by aggressively hiking rates. All eyes will be on the Reserve Bank's rate decision on Tuesday.
The RBA really does have a big job ahead of it to bring inflation down, and we're looking for another 4 50 basis point rate RBA cash rate increases over the next 4 months. So it is a very steep increase.
In Sydney, mortgage costs are on the minds of borrowers.
Obviously there's going to be knock-on effects in terms of real estate. I have been forecasting some of the numbers like on my mortgage, and I think it's going to get painful probably towards the end of this year.
Economic trouble set to worsen.
With the inflation figures up there, economic the situation is not going to be improving a lot and not anywhere quickly. But looking at the interest rates, how much higher will it go?
I think the Reserve Bank will deliver on further rate increases, and what these inflation data have told us is that the Reserve Bank's likely to go 50 basis points at its August meeting. anyone that was thinking about or toying with a 75 basis point move from the RBA has wound that back on the basis of these slightly weaker than expected inflation figures. So you won't see the Reserve Bank doing what the Fed will likely do and raise interest rates 75 basis points. And I think what the Reserve Bank will do will try and get the cash rate to what it thinks is a neutral level, around about 2.5%. And then what I think it should do is, pause for some time, whether that be sort of a 3-month, 6-month pause, just to see what the impact of its policy might be, because it's really raising interest rates at a pace where it's not getting much new incoming data on just what's happening in the economy.
And on that point about data, we know the CPI comes out quarterly. There has been a mention today from the ABS that we might see a paper about more frequent data. What's your view? Should it be monthly?
Well, economists have been desperately looking for a monthly CPI in the Australian context. We are one of the few countries in the world that still has a quarterly CPI, and it's not timely enough, I guess, particularly for policymakers to be making these decisions where they're raising interest rates so aggressively. They really need a more timely measure of inflation that they can reassess, fine-tune policy and be much more nimble. And that's really the underlying point. These policy decisions need to be informed, and a quarterly CPI, while it is obviously complete, it is more useful, it rarely gets revised too much. It's just really not enough information for policymakers, and that needs to change. The ABS is aware of that, and we all hope as economists that will change in the near term.
Well, we definitely hope so. We'll have to keep our eyes open to see what happens with the Reserve Bank meeting on Tuesday. Well, right now, let's go to Melbourne, where a developer could pollute the Yarra River.
It's been promoted as the world's most sustainable shopping centre. But when it rains, the stormwater runoff from this 20-hectare site will end up untreated here in Gardeners Creek.
Those nutrient loads also take a lot of oxygen from the water, so it has impacts on the water life, such as eels and fish.
Once the polluted water flows through Gardeners Creek, it ends up in the Yarra River, then in the bay.
You have oil coming from car parks, litter, microplastics and different things, and we don't treat that. It's going to create a really big issue down the track.
That's why the developers initially planned to build a wetland to treat stormwater at this site. But after granting provisional approval in 2015, Melbourne Water decided the plan wasn't structurally safe. The site remains fenced off. The developers say it's a decision for Melbourne Water and the Whitehorse City Council. None would speak on camera. But the council's target is for 45% of nitrogen to be removed from the stormwater before it hits the drain. Without the wetland, only 31.4% of nitrogen will be removed. It also wants 80% of solids to be removed, things like leaf matter and rubbish. Without the wetland, only 66% of solids will be removed. Councils downstream opposed the plan, but Whitehorse approved it.
People are really starting to appreciate their green spaces, and for this to happen, it just shows a slight disregard for what we've got in this urban setting.
The developer will have to pay Melbourne Water about $220,000 so they can build a wetland. But that could be anywhere in the catchment, so it won't stop the stormwater ending up in this creek.
So we already know that offsets are not the solution. That's actually a band-aid. We actually have to create actions that prevent the damage.
Whitehorse Council plans to advocate to Melbourne Water for the wetland to be built locally, but there's no guarantee. The developer says the offset means it still achieves best practice stormwater treatment.
So there you go. A lot of storm over the stormwater treatment and, of course, all ending up in Yarra and then finishing off in the bay. So hopefully they come up with some very good solution there for that. But right now from Melbourne, let's go to Adelaide, where, these days if you're organising any big functions and events outdoors, as we know, the ban on single-use plastic means that, plastic containers are no longer allowed. So what are we getting back to? Are we going back to serving beer in the can?
For years, cans have been off limits at major sporting events, and this is why.
There's cans on the ground, he can't let this go on, he stopped the match.
But now the Adelaide Oval is pushing for the return of the beloved tinny, asking for its liquor licence to be changed to allow alcohol in cans rather than cups.
We don't think any good will come of this decision. We think that this puts both police and the public at risk, and it's an issue that should be stopped dead in its tracks.
The Stadium Management Authority argues the move will be better for the environment.
If they want to be really environmentally friendly, there's other things that they can do. They can certainly use compostable plastic cups. That would be far safer than the aluminium cans that they're talking about.
A similar trial has been underway at several grounds in Melbourne, including the MCG. Critics here are urging caution.
My counterpart from Victoria has told me about the injuries that one woman has received, and there's civil action being taken against the stadium in relation to that.
You're just going to open it up for the minority of people that will misbehave and make the experience less enjoyable for others around them.
The Premier, who's accustomed to a tin or two, is keeping an open mind.
This is about making sure that we've got an environmentally appropriate policy in place. This is about making sure that patron safety is top of mind as well and getting that balance right.
The beer's not the only potential change in line for the Oval, with public transport officials once again raising the prospect of charging the Crows and the Power for free public transport offered on game day.
We're working with the clubs now on, we've spoken to Adelaide Oval about how that will work next season.
And if the clubs pay for this service, then this is going to end up jacking up membership rates. One way or another, footy fans are going to pay.
The Premier insists there will be no charge for fans on the day.
I'm the boss of John Willen, and I'm telling you that we won't be going to a model that sees the Footy Express requiring some sort of contribution from patrons on the day.
But the government will be asking the clubs for a contribution to the cost. Cameron Slessor.
So there you go. And users always end up paying. Well, right now, let's go to that news when we saw that tragic and horrific, the truck horror in South Australia. Let's see what was behind that.
Queenslander Ross Hicks was in no mood to talk after being released on bail.
Surely you have something to say to the victims.
Mr Hicks has been given permission to return to his home on Queensland's Sunshine Coast. His family surrounded him as he left the watch house after his video-linked court appearance.
Don't say a word.
Mr Hicks was arrested after the truck he was driving crashed into several vehicles and a bus at the bottom of Adelaide's southeastern freeway on Sunday afternoon. He was taken to the Royal Adelaide Hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, while 9 other people were also hurt in the accident. He's facing 7 charges, including causing harm by dangerous driving and driving without a licence.
This is one of those ones where you can't help but feel a little frustrated that someone would allegedly be so reckless so as to drive unlicensed, particularly on a heavy vehicle, on that stretch of road.
As part of his bail, Mr Hicks will need to report to the Maroochydore Police Station weekly. There were no conditions imposed on his driving. Shari Hams, ABC News, Adelaide.
So no provisions imposed on his driving license, and driving without a license and crashing into all those cars there, and he's on his way back to Maroochydore. Well, right now, let's take a look at the healthcare centre, and of course, especially in the aged care sector.
Annika Wells, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you.
Why are people in nursing homes dying of COVID in record numbers, even though we have vaccines and antivirals? What's going on?
Because we have record numbers of COVID cases across the country, and so when those COVID numbers are up in every single cohort, that includes aged care. And there's a lot going on in aged care, and I really sincerely hope that Australians feel that we are better prepared this winter than we have been for the previous 2.
Let's just talk.
And that is our Annika Wells, who is from our Northgate ward of Brisbane.
Talk about those numbers though. Of all of those people who've died, were they fully vaccinated and double boosted, or has their immunity been allowed to wane?
There'd be a mix, I think, of people who are by choice unvaccinated right through to 4th dose vaccinated, and the difficulty has been, I think, for our vax teams getting in, because as soon as there's an outbreak in a centre, they can't go in, so they've got to go back and back and back again. And to that effect, I have, as part of the winter plan, mandated that we are publishing vax rates from 1 August, which in previous winters helped get vaccination rates up to just do everything we can.
So you have that time-critical information. One of the reasons we're here talking about potential reforms in aged care is because of the heart-rending stories that drove the Royal Commission. Are you satisfied with the level of inspection and audit that is going on right now in aged care homes?
That's the feedback I've got from people who come to my mobile offices. I've done 6 of them since becoming a minister to make sure that I'm still hearing from people in suburban Brisbane, whilst also being briefed now by department and stakeholders. We are bringing forward the capability review of the regulator. It was something that the Royal Commission asked us to do, and we're bringing it forward so that we can get those answers as quickly as possible for people.
Do you know how many visits have been made this year so far?
From the regulator, I don't, I'm sorry. That's a watching brief for us. They work to best practice, and I do know that they're under-resourced, so I guess my answer to you would be not enough.
How can you have a proper audit of what's going on right now, given that appalling history, if you don't know the number of visits, but also you don't know what those visits are reporting?
Because we do bring forward the capability review. So we are going to know that sooner. That will start this year. It was projected to start next year. So we've brought that forward because we want to know those numbers sooner. Certainly people...
Well, there you go, having your facts or no facts not with you on the time. And Annika Wells there being interviewed on the aged care sector. Well, right now we'll take a quick look at the Darwin Daylight Brawl.
Chaos quickly turns to terror. At least 2 people brandishing knives. It's 4:30 on Tuesday afternoon when shoppers at the Darwin Woolies are forced to duck for cover. A nearby pharmacy shutting up shop as the violence continues.
There was customers from Woolworths kind of ducking in to make sure that they got into the pharmacy just to take safety.
Police say between 10 and 30 people were involved in this violent brawl, a fight between 2 groups of people. A 16-year-old boy has been arrested.
Possibly what group of people are in town, but again we need to liaise with a whole heap of other non-government agencies to determine whether that information is correct or not.
Police believe it's unlikely there was a risk to passers-by and that no injuries have been reported, but say it's entirely unacceptable behaviour and terrifying for witnesses.
Very frightening.
Definitely unacceptable behaviour. There's no place for that in our community today. So, the police are doing the best that they can, and the community as well. We need to be very, very strong in what we do and the way we educate our children, and also in the community events and things when we get together to pass on that message of goodwill that, this kind of behavior is just totally unacceptable. Well, right now, let's go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and much more on India and the Indian diaspora. Indian government has approved defence purchases worth 29,000 crore rupees or $3.6 billion. In a significant boost for self-reliance in defence manufacturing sector, India has cleared weapon purchases worth 28,732 crores, the Union Ministry of Defence said on 26 July. This is in line with the vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to safeguard the borders, said officials. The close-quarter carbines, which will be for frontline soldiers deployed along India's borders, including the line of actual control with China, where the 2 countries have been locked in a tense standoff since May 2020. The Defence Acquisition Council, India's apex weapons procurement body, accorded its acceptance of the necessity for the capital acquisition proposals at a meeting chaired by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. Under India's defence procurement rules, AON is the first step towards buying military hardware. The procurement of autonomous surveillance and armed drone swarms was cleared to boost the Army's capability in modern warfare in the backdrop of drone technology proving to be a force multiplier in military operations and recent conflicts around the world, the Defence Ministry said. India is confident that in the new order post-COVID, the world sees India as a trusted partner for electronics and computer chip manufacturing. By 2029, India will be the largest consumer of electronics at $110 billion. The government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi is focusing on taking advantage of that domestic need to become a global manufacturing hub in IT, ICT and electronics. We bring you the second part of an exclusive wide-ranging interview with Rajiv Chandrasekhar, India's Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology and Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. The minister says there is a tectonic shift in how the world views and trusts India for shaping future technologies and to make India a base for manufacturing computer chips. India has allocated $30 billion to attract investment by global majors.
There is an interesting way that India is positioned in the post-COVID world, and not positioned by India alone, but a combination of factors. India's track record over the last 7 years in all things technology and digital. The way India has used technology during the most black swan event in our history, the COVID period, and the fact that the world in post-COVID world is now seeking for trusted partners in digital technologies and products. Given this sort of tectonic change in the way the world views technology and the world views India's role in technology, in my opinion, it is absolutely critical for the world's consuming nations that India grow as an electronic producer and a semiconductor producer. So it is partly our own ambitions, partly it is also that the world requires India to become this trusted global partner for electronics and semiconductors. We think we are doing, Prime Minister launched this mission of electronics a few years ago. We are at about $75–80 billion of electronics from nothing in 2014. We will be one of the largest consumers and markets of semiconductors by the year 2029. We will be $110 billion of semiconductor consumption for India's compute industry, the device industry, the automotive industry and the mobility industry. So we will have a significant market. We will be one of the world's largest fastest growing electronics manufacturing nation. So all of this, in my opinion, leads me to this conclusion, should lead us to the conclusion that we will be a semiconductor nation very soon. In terms of capital outlay, we have provided for $10 billion of capital in the semiconductor space, $20 billion of support for the electronic space, $30 billion have been provided in an unprecedented show of our ambition and confidence in terms of electronics and semiconductor. I have absolutely no doubt that we will show significant results in the coming months and years, and that I have also no doubt, absolutely no doubt in my mind, that as we look to the future of technology, as we look to the future of electronics and semiconductors and AI and blockchain and Web 3.0, India will be a country that is no longer a consumer of technologies, but we will be in the leading pack of countries and innovators that will shape the future of the technology. So I think we are living in very interesting times. This is a government headed by a Prime Minister who has a very deep, abiding belief and vision on Indian entrepreneurship and Indian innovation. He has created the policy framework, he has created the capital requirements for that to succeed. And I have no doubt in my mind at all that we will be not only successful, we will be very successful in the coming years. This is a long game. This is not a thing where you just snap a finger and it happens overnight. We understand our direction, we understand our goals, and we are very committed to be successful. We want to be successful, and I think the momentum and the energy and the passion and the hard work of our startups and innovation and youth will make sure we are successful.
The first day of India's biggest spectrum auction for 72 GHz of 5G airwaves ended with 4 rounds of auction. The total sale price is estimated at Rs 4.3 lakh crores or nearly $54 billion. India's largest ever auction of spectrum used to carry mobile signals saw bids of Rs 1.45 lakh crores or more than $18 billion for 5G airwaves. Bids were received from groups run by Mukesh Ambani, Sunil Bharti Mittal and Gautam Adani on the first day on 26 July. All 4 applicants, Ambani's Reliance Jio, Mittal's Bharti Airtel, Vodafone Idea and an Adani Group firm actively participated in the auction of 5G spectrum that offers ultra-high speeds about 10 times faster than 4G, lag-free connectivity and can enable billions of connected devices to share data in real time. The government had put up a total of 72 gigahertz of spectrum on sale, worth at least Rs 4.3 lakh crores or US$ 54 billion just at the reserve price. Though the market was not expecting a high-pitched battle and heavy buying due to abundance of the airwaves on sale. The government is hoping to wrap up the sale this week and complete the post-sale official formalities before August 15, Vaishnav said. Indian Telecom Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said that 3300 MHz and 26 GHz bands attracted strong bids, the mid and high-end bands seeing keen interest. Bids were also received for 700 MHz band. The auction is being held for spectrum in various low 600 MHz, 700 MHz, 800 MHz, 900 MHz, 1800 MHz, 2100 MHz, 2300 MHz, mid 3300 MHz and high 26 GHz frequency bands. During the ongoing monsoon session of Indian Parliament, 19 MPs of the Indian Upper House Rajya Sabha have been suspended after a similar action against 4 Lower House Lok Sabha MPs. 19 opposition members have been suspended from Rajya Sabha for the rest of the week for disrupting sessions on 26 July. BJP leaders said the decision to suspend opposition MPs from the Rajya Sabha was taken with a heavy heart. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal said the government was ready for a debate on price rise once Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman recovers and returns to Parliament. The latest round of suspension comes a day after 4 Congress MPs in Lok Sabha were suspended for the entire monsoon session ending August 12th. MPs held placards inside the House despite warnings by Speaker Om Birla not to do so. The action taken against 19 Rajya Sabha MPs would likely escalate the opposition's anger against the government over what they claim was an attempt to shut voices that question the ruling alliance's economic and social policies. India has spent nearly US$ 2 billion to build roads near India-China border in the past 5 years. Amid tensions between the two countries along the line of actual control, especially since 2020, Indian Parliament was told on 25th July that the government has constructed all-weather roads measuring 2,088 kilometers to improve connectivity to areas near the India-China border over the last 5 years, with the construction activity reflecting New Delhi's focus on infrastructure development in forwarding areas. Minister of State for Defence Ajay Bhatt said in a written reply that overall, India has spent nearly US$ 2.5 billion on the construction of 3,595 kilometers of roads to provide all-weather access to borders with China, Pakistan, Myanmar and Bangladesh. Bhatt said, adding that these projects were undertaken by the Border Roads Organization and include 1,336 kilometers of roads at a cost of 4,242 crores near the India-Pakistan border. The trailer of upcoming Bollywood series The Great Weddings of Munnes is finally out. The 10-episode series will premiere on Woot in August. The first trailer of Abhishek Banerjee's project The Great Wedding of Munnes promises a fresh storyline. The show also stars Barkha Singh and Pankaj Dheer. It is directed...
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have in the Daily India Report. And thanks, Anubhuti, for that report there. Urdu Forum, together with the Sangeet Premi Club, offers a grand gala musical variety show. And you can win a free ticket to the event just by messaging Australian Indian Radio and mentioning this ad. And of course, that time is of the essence. Tickets are limited. Please call us now or send us a message on our Facebook page to win free tickets to the Urdu Forum and Sangeet Premi Club's Grand Gala Musical Night. Act now. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your company on this 28th day of July. Well, July is almost out of the window as they reckon, and 13 degrees and sunny in Brisbane. It's been wonderful having your company. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.